I respect Cat Matlala's right to be presumed innocent. Oh, he's so cute. And by the way, he's not cute. It's just that he's got a few cents. He change. He's got a few cents. Doesn't have money. Otherwise, he'll not be looting. He's not cute. I've been a model. I know what is cute. I know what is cute. I know what is handsome. Jacob Zuma at some point was handsome because he was rising. Ooh, he's handsome. Women, anything. Ooh, he's handsome. And you hear about purple gang. People with profiles as people, gender-based violence, they shut down. Vusimuzi, I like this Cat Matlala. I don't know, when God was making man out of clay somewhere, the devil must have sat down and say, I'm gonna give them the ANC. Because there is no way. You've got to hate black people to govern the way the ANC is governed. Yeah, the ANC, it's a party that it needs to be gone. They're not fighting on our behalf. When Paul Mashatile is fighting, Balula is fighting, they're not fighting because they want to better our lives. Whenever they're fighting, it's about leadership, because it's about resources for themselves and their families. It's never about the people. Whenever African leaders are fighting these coup d'etats, it's never about the people. It's always about their business interests. This is where we find ourselves. They're not talking about us. These guys that are talking up, they're giving a slice, a small slice, Ramaphosa. That's why when they open borders, they're not thinking about us. They're thinking about MTN. They're thinking about telecommunications companies that they have in Lagos with these multinationals. See, now we are not a consideration. The G20 resolutions don't cover us. When they talk SADC, free trade, what company do you own? South Africa does not belong to South Africans. I can't believe Guti, South Africa is a company. Awe, Sanbonani Makaya, Ike Khumalo, one more time. Majority of the people, they say Ike is Nigerian. I don't know, most people, the masses, they are ill-informed, not only ill-informed but illiterate. That's why the politicians, they can easily fool people, because people are followers. Ike comes from Dwight Ike Eisenhower, the American president who was a war general during the World War II. I often say with the South Africans, actually the general masses, they are easily fooled. They follow pop culture without questioning. Hence, someone can come, from nowhere, promising people jobs, and then abuse them, take them to slavery, which has happened in a Russia situation where these influencers, they were advertising for companies where people are taken there to manufacture drones, to manufacture bombs, and people don't ask questions. I don't know whether it's the level of desperation. And you can see now on dating sites, people looking for love. And back in the days when I was young, it was scandalous, to be on the magazine writing, to True Love magazine and saying, I am Ike Khumalo, I am 28, I live in Soweto, I'm looking for a love. These guys, they no longer know how to court a woman. So now we used to pride ourselves. Even if she wanted you. The skill, the art. Give me 5 reasons why you don't want me. There's another guy, my opposite neighbor. He's the one. He used to say to women, give me 20 reasons why you don't want me. That is verbal rape, No, why 20? I'm making it sure that she doesn't have an answer. And it was like, nice when you meet a woman. Sometimes, I do that once in a while. I see a woman and people, they become surprised. You walked up to me, it's like I'm doing something ancient. Majority of the people that I've dated are people that, I'll be driving, I'll be at the filling station, I'll be supermarket, I see a woman, Then I walk up to her. And then I say, hi, my name is Ike. I saw you, and, I said, I cannot just pass you. And I don't even have to rehearse punchlines. They just come natural. And they say, wow, because people now, they are on Tinder. They are on DMs and they're getting a raw deal because the people on Tinder and DMs are not the actual people. And if you're lucky, I don't know, you'll find a person but doesn't look like the pictures, filters. If you're unfortunate, of which is becoming the norm now, people are being human trafficked. You meet people that you don't know. Like a few months ago, there's this lady, met a person on social media, and then her mom drove her to that person in Pretoria, left her there. They said there's a party, but the mom I blame the most because the mom was supposed to get inside the house, make sure everything is kosher, and then the mom left her there. The girl was raped. There was a case now. I think we're still waiting for a judgment where they say consent should be a bit stretched. It can no longer be that a woman must say yes, but the man must also make sure that there is consent, beyond reasonable doubt. So they're trying to shift the burden. Unlike in the past, the burden was on the one accusing the other, which must prove which is a rape. But now they say the man must also make sure. I mean, I've always made sure, I can sleep with a woman, same bed. If she says no, no. Some other guys are very issue, man. They say no. Next time I don't want to know mfethu. Arifitla kontlunga hana kamutibela kabo 12. That is so cruel. I mean, I've taken women. They change their minds. Lele straight too. We are naked. Somebody that but I've got a boyfriend. But why are we doing that? This and that. And I say no, it's fine. And she'll come back because I'm different, and I pride myself with that.
There are women that say yes and then later on change their story, whether they're a trap or they have their own.
Yeah, that is criminal. That woman is a criminal, the woman who changes the story. But as a guy who grew up in the street, you can spot the danger. So that's why sometimes I become surprised when a guy is saying, this woman must for 5,000. You can spot the danger. Hence, it is important for people to be out there, socialize. Unfortunately, now people, they're behind a computer, behind a screens, DM. You don't know this person. And then you get surprises. But back in the days, you can tell. There are certain things that are indicators. Even when you meet a slave queen, you meet a hoe, you can tell what I know. So that's why the old school, this woman is for marriage. This woman is for puff and pass. This one is to keep along, while I'm waiting for something better. Oh, she'll be, a concubine. We know that. But nowadays, these guys, they mix, because they are not there in the streets. We know. This one, but this is where we find ourselves. Yeah, but lots of things are happening and people don't ask questions. And yeah, one of the issues that has happened this week, my politics way too, is to hear Judge Pahlane was arrested, and it's kind of awkward to see one of your own, being in the dock, criminals. It's kind of sad. And I'm not saying criminals should not be arrested. Criminals should be arrested. And the judiciary must be kept as pure as possible or closest to purity. Back in the days, we used to say, as sober as a judge. But apparently most judges, they are drinking now. And they've been accused of taking bribes. We've seen even Donald Trump, the Democrats judges, making dubious decisions. Gang members being given bails. Gang members' charges being dismissed. This is where we find ourselves. And I hope, even acting judge president Lidwaba I was mentioning Matlala commission. These are people that I appear before them, I've grown, to like. Majority of them I do like, and it's kind of sad when you hear what the judges are also tainted with CR17. Bank statements. It's not an easy thing. But this is where we find ourselves, and I hope with the judges, they recognize the fact that if you collapse the judiciary, we no longer have the country, because we're in a constitutional democracy. Who is the last arbiter besides the courts. If you taken the courts, we are in Colombia, we are in Mexico, yeah. But yeah, one of the things that I saw, which was also painful, the situation in MK, and with MK, sorry, it's unfortunate that South Africans, they no longer question. People are followers. I come from organizations where we interrogate issues before we adopt issues. Collective leadership. No orders coming from above. Ubaba uthi, Jacob Zuma says this. You question a person. Leadership. Here are our founding documents. When you do this, when you empower your family, what are you doing? When you build a massive house in front of the poor, when you eat in front of the poor, what are you saying? Nama minions lapago Julius Malema. And I watch even in parliament, these guys, MK, questioning Matlala. Look, I respect Matlala's right to be presumed innocent. But if you're an MP, you must take into account that this person is accused of horrendous crimes. But they were warm to him, feeling his pain. And they don't know why this guy came there. I mean, he's got pending charges. You think the guy is going to come there to implicate himself? That's why in the criminal, court, if you're going to take a statement from a person who's accused, you make that person a state witness against his perpetrators, co-accused. You must first convict him. Then from there he's got nothing to lose. But in this case, this one, he will come there to exonerate himself. But I wanted to touch the issue as a Russia, of which I understand majority of the people, they are suffering inside the country. They want jobs, opportunities, but not as the members of the public. We need to question. I mean, if somebody comes saying to you, there are job opportunities in Russia, I mean, come on. Russia, near Ukraine, they are fighting, engaged in a war. And when you think that this business is normal, it's like if someone taking me to Somalia, to Afghanistan, promising me lucrative jobs, 100,000 a month in Afghanistan. I remember I dated this lady in the 90s. She came to me. Actually, we were on and off. She says, no, I got a job in Saudi Arabia. I met this guy. I said, no, who do you know that side? And this person didn't have matric. It was in my late 90s. Didn't have matric. And I asked, do you think in Saudi Arabia and Asia, there are no people to fill in these jobs? About India, they are poor. India is closer to those countries. There are poor people in Dubai. There are poor people in Dubai. There are poor people in Bahrain. They can come specifically to South Africa, look for you. Young girls, and most of them, they were in their 20s. And then gone. Says no new opportunities. Few years later, I heard stories, not so nice. And then they eventually came back. And then she was not aware, which was giving me information, because she was telling me, they came back with other girls from Deep Soweto, and they're going to meet, go to the embassy. As soon as they mentioned the embassy, I knew there was a problem. Once you start saying embassy, I knew it was bad. They had to be rescued. Back in the days, there were people who would go, but you shut Greece. Metric. They put you in a cage, you entertain, you become prostitutes, you become dancers, they take your passports. That's what happened. Because people are desperate, they don't ask questions. You meet a person on Facebook, you don't know this person. You meet a person on Tinder. Actually, I still frown upon, abantu meet about on social media. You can meet a person, your local church, school, library. At least there's a track record. We know where to find this person. You can't just meet a person and says, no, I'm in Everton, I'm in Boxburg, you go meet. The next thing, you disappeared, especially women. Women are desperate. They go all the way. and then get surprises. You meet a person in Hillbrow, you go for a job interview in a dodgy area. At least bring your brother, your father, I don't know, bring someone, as your bodyguard. And there are certain places, Mabatayla, no, it can't be. But this is what is happening. And it was, kind of sad when you see the siblings. I don't like Tutuzana Zuma. I don't like Jacob Zuma. I don't think these guys, they've got the best intentions for this country. It's all about Zumas. They're building their dynasty using other people. But it's kind of sad when you see sisters fighting amongst themselves. When you see siblings not getting along, the other one opening cases for the other. But that's what we see, even as Malokshini, people fighting for four-room houses. Some, they even kill each other. But it's kind of sad when you see that. But we need to see people being arrested. You cannot take other people's kids. Ukembuleng impilo zabo ubayise eRussia. When they get to Russia, they send into the army. But now, with these people, they should question, why am I sent to Russia? Why can't the Russians do those jobs? They've got people there who are educated, but people go, it's that overseas mentality. We find ourselves there. And yeah, it's kind of sad that the Tutu, Zuma, and the other sisters, they are fighting. This is what usually happens in South Africa, where you find siblings not getting along. Yes?
You were still telling us, right? When people open a case, the person that they trust most is a judge. These days, judges are being arrested. Is it vendetta, like a propaganda attack, or do you think these judges turn out to be corrupt, and what has caused, is it the desperation of South Africa that has caused even judges who we expect to be sober as a judge to be compromised? Desperation, or what's the inner cartel with Ramaphosa? What's up?
I will say this, something that you already know. Judges, they come from a society. They don't come from heaven. And they're influenced by their culture, education, where they grew up, and opportunity. Sometimes it's greed. And many judges, they were attorneys, they were lawyers. There are lawyers who are involved in malpractice, stealing clients' monies. What happens if you take that person and make that person a judge later? And his criminal mind doesn't necessarily go away. There are other people where they've got a criminal mind, but once, they ascend to bench, they change. I remember one judge during apartheid, he said, once you become a judge, it's like something, falls on you. Now I've got irresponsibility. Now I must be impartial. But not everyone is like that. Other people, once they become judges, they abuse the power and then start looking for opportunities, and then they grab them once they are within reach, which is unfortunate. But judges, they are human beings. We always appeal to judges, they must recognize that they have power. And being a judge is a calling. I appear in court almost 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And some of the judges, I must say, you listen to this judge, you wonder, let alone the judgment. Some is the arrogant, some they are grumpy, some you wonder with this person, was he called to be in this position? It's like when you see a pastor who's evil. Yeah, it makes you question. Some of them, they are jumpy. And there are those judges, they're so nice. You feel good that I'm in the right profession. There's some of the judges, yes, the way they speak to counsel, the way they speak to attorneys, it's like they're God, of which that can't be right. As a judge, you must recognize that you've got power. You're changing people's lives. You're like Jesus at that particular point in time, because some of the decisions actually most of the decisions, they've got an impact in people's lives. People are losing jobs, people are losing houses, they're losing cars, in contracts, they've been double-crossed, people have been sent to jail for long terms. You know, this week I watch, there's a channel where they show people who've been wrongly convicted in America. Some rightfully so, but I focused mainly on those who are wrongly convicted. You find a person, 65 years. I understand that judges, they have to deal with evidence in front of them. Back in the days where there was no DNA, maybe new evidence come in. You know the pain of a person making an application in a court, but Mr. Smith, after new evidence came into the picture, we now find Uguti, you are wrongly convicted. You may go home, you are free. And an old man says, after 65 years, free to do what? Where do I go? I don't have a job. I don't have a house. Where do I go? My wife is dead. I don't know where my kids are. You're releasing me to what? I may as well die here inside. I saw one show. There's this guy, you know, this thing of content, sometimes it's crazy. People doing content, some of the content, is criminal. You know, it's like blowing women's dresses, pretending to be cleaning, you know, the paving or the pavement, and you blow their weaves. You know, some of the content is offensive. I saw this one. This guy, he's got money. He goes around Kuma Court in America. He bails people who need bail or people who are on bail. You know, there are people who can't afford, but maybe bail is set at $200 or maybe in South Africa, 5,000 or 10,000. This person is on bail, but he cannot afford to pay bail money. So this guy goes there, he pays like a good Samaritan. He comes there, he asks a court, a police station, who needs bail? Uba knows a bail, no, we've got so and so. They check the list. He just doesn't know these people. He pays bail. Once they come out, he records them. Obviously, he's expecting them to be happy. You know, I got to bail. So he bumped into this old man. He says, no, bailed you. I'm the one who paid your bail, you know. Yeah, but, you know, let's go. This guy is confused. Could you pay, you know, bail? Okay, they go to McDonald's, they buy burgers and all that. It's late at night. They say, hey, brother man, thank you, we'll see you. The guy who's been released say, wait, where are you going? He says, I don't have a home. Man, I live in the street. You should have left me inside. And the one, he says, no, you can't leave me here. He's fighting the one who paid the bail. He says, you can't leave me here. Where do I go? I don't have a home. I'm homeless. You're bailing homeless people. He says, no, take me to jail. Because of the content, you know. And it's not one incident. Now, man, no, I don't need bail. You know, where do I go now? Where do I go? So, into Yama content, you know. So, it's crazy what is happening. So, judges, they must recognize human life. And people lose jobs. You know, once you are on trial, you're convicted. Even sometimes before you're even convicted, people lose jobs. Your employer can't wait. They replace you. You'll be fighting once you come out, but you'll be outside. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. And another thing that has also happened beyond the court thing, and I've been observing the Purple Gang, and in line with justice, you know, the society is pilagoyo. South Africans are hypocrites. We're always crying a corruption. Because the politicians are corrupt, business is corrupt, but a man in the street, he's corrupt. You know, when I grew up, your hand is always disturbing me, because when you keep on doing that, I look at your hand. So, growing up, going to school, we always taught Bible verses, folk tales, things that we shouldn't do. It was for a purpose. A good Samaritan who helped somebody who was robbed, assaulted. When Jesus was asked, out of the laws of Moses, which law should we obey the most? Jesus took the 10 commandments. He took the first 5. We call them love God, because all the first 5 laws, they speak about God. Don't worship other gods but me. All, that is godly. And the last 5, they're talking about the relationship between man and man, me and you. We call them love neighbors. So he took the first 5, he made them one. He says, love God with all your heart, love your neighbor. It is that spirit that was guiding us. When you entered a bus, you stood up when you see a woman, pregnant, older lady, somebody who's your elder. You helped, assisted, somebody carrying luggage, somebody in a difficult situation, you assisted. And you had the empathy. But now there's no empathy. We are in a whole phase. People love the bad guys. When I was young, the movies, they were all speaking into one. The good guys, they're winning. The movie my pad. When the ending comes, the good guys won. But now we started seeing more movies when the baddies, they're winning. You watch a person like Ike Matlala. I respect his rights. The very same South Africans who are experiencing human trafficking, violent crimes, drugs, they're now sympathizing with Ike Matlala. They now worship criminals. In Pretoria, it's even worse. I see them, you check social media, they will say, Vusimuzi, Mongol, Boso, Gusi. And now you say, come on. These are people who are violating the very same community. With us when we were young, criminals were people who were fighting the system. That's why when they say, Ike Matlala, Brian Mokgotsi, all these gangs, all these Warawara Ice Boy, they are mafias. They are not mafias. We are reducing mafias into something that they are not. Mafias, when they started, these are people who started because they were financially excluded from the job market, from business opportunities. When they got to America, the Italians, they were looking for opportunities, the Irish gangs. As soon as they got opportunities, the crime reduced. And these are people who were robbing the system. The Italian mafias never sold drugs. Actually, it was a criminal, offense. If you are a mafia selling drugs, it came with the Colombians, the South Americans later, maybe later on, but they were not involved in drugs. They were into, alcohol, bootlegging, banking fraud. They were robbing the system, of which the system is always the enemy. The multinationals, the government of the day, they were robbing the taxmen, like Robin Hood. These are Robin Hood. These ANC guys, they're robbing the people. They're taking money from Tembisa Hospital, Baragwanath Hospital, money for infrastructure, money that's supposed to clean the streets, money that's supposed to be invested in hospitals, employing doctors. That's not being a mafia. The mafias, they've got a code. Families, they gather, they sit somewhere and say, okay, now we are into alcohol, we are into bouncing in us. I'm not saying everything that they do is good, but they've got ethics. Unlike these ones, they're stealing, buying Lamborghinis, Pagani. How do you buy a car worth 50 million in South Africa? How do you buy a car worth 50 million? How do you buy Lamborghinis? Who's being empowered? When you're buying Lamborghinis, a car that's not even manufactured here. and import. That's what happened with African dictators. Boapache, they stole money here, go and invest it, put it in banks, go Switzerland. And when they die, that money is frozen. Their families cannot get into that money because you are a despot, you are a wanted man, or you died, under, investigation. Your country can't get that money because they did not deposit that money. They deal with individuals, so that money is gone. Carry no more. This is where you find yourselves. These guys are hardcore criminals, and I'm surprised even girls, they like these guys. Majority of the influencers, musicians, DJs, actors and actresses, they date these guys, and they don't tell young girls, Mena, I'm funded by this guy who's involved in human trafficking, Nigerians. If you're dating a Nigerian, you're a criminal. You can have about BBL and all that, but it's because of blood money. Kidnappings, prostitution. Most of these girls who are fly Instagram models, they date these guys. These guys who are involved with crime, a crime that is killing society. You look at drugs, the impact of drugs. I remember in South Africa, during Irama Mendrek, Sipupumala, Batindanda, was brought in here kakhulu ama-soccer bosses because they had the luxury to travel, go Zambia, babuye. I remember some of them, they will be accused ukuthi they're dealing with drugs. Some were even arrested. I had an opportunity to sell drugs, but my conscience would not allow me. There's a friend of mine, I grew up with this guy from a crèche. I knew him, high school. His grandmother was a drug kingpin. Nabakhonyana bakubo bonke baya involved. But Cape Town, they had a distribution. And I was going to sit comfortably because sometimes they wanted a hiding place in my drugs. Because bona bebashisa. But I had to reconsider my political consciousness. That was the early 90s. And they were cool, driving cars, wearing a silk shirts and all that, bafaka ma chain, abo mashwabana, Porsche shoes. But I said, no, I can't. I took a decision, good, no, I can't. No. And I did some things. You know what? I can't be selling drugs. Let me go to showbiz. And before that, Tina Beshaipatu, carjacking. Izengathi lokishini. We were the first to go into car hijacking. And we did not hijack abantu abamnyama. We did not hijack poor people. We were hijacking the system, company cars, from the era yama target ngama 80s. You see, we were always clear with who is the enemy. Even now, the enemy are politicians, all of them, with no exception in parliament. The multinationals that have captured the South Africa. South Africa does not belong to South Africans. I can believe with South Africa, it's a company. We've experienced G20, people talking extraction of minerals. We don't own those minerals. These are companies owned by these multinationals, British West India company like Zimbabwean, whatever companies that were owned about John Roads. That has never stopped 1994. It's a continuation. You check KZN, this land is now under Arabs, Northern Cape. So South Africa, we don't have land. So when you're talking about these resolutions, they're not talking about us. These guys that are talking, they're giving a slice, a small slice, Ramaphosa. That's why when they open borders, they're not thinking about us. They're thinking about MTN. They're thinking about telecommunications companies that they have in Lagos with these multinationals. Saying we are not a consideration. The G20 resolutions don't cover us. When they talk SADC, free trade, what company do you own? You're not even employed there. They're talking on their behalf. That's why in South Africa, they have no counter. Even if Donald Trump can say whatever and say you're not welcomed here, they have no counter and say, okay, fine. If you're going to impose tariffs, not you're going to react because you've got minerals, because they don't own those minerals. And speaking of Donald Trump, I like Donald Trump. And I like him not because he's got something for me, because he loves his people. Of course, he's got business interests that have been taken care of now. But He puts his people first. It's America. Where have you heard an ANC leader talking about, I'm putting South Africa first? Even when they fight amongst themselves, they're not fighting on our behalf. When Paul Mashatile is fighting Balula and Balula is fighting, they're not fighting because they want to better our lives. Whenever they're fighting, it's about leadership, because it's about resources for themselves and their families. It's never about the people. Whenever African leaders are fighting, there's coup d'etats, it's never about the people. It's always about their business interests. This is where we find ourselves, And you hear about people gang, people with profiles as people, gender-based violence, they shut down. Vusimuzi, I like this cat Matlala. Oh, he's so cute. And by the way, he's not cute. It's just that he's got a few cents. He change. He's got a few cents. Doesn't have money. Otherwise, he'll not be looting the state. Of course, I don't have the kind of money that he has. He's not cute. I've been a model. I know what is cute. You may argue sexy because women see sexy differently than men. But when you say cute, I know what is cute. I know what is handsome. Jacob Zuma at some point was handsome because he was rising. Ooh, he's handsome. Women, anything. Ooh, he's handsome. Zola 7 at some point was handsome. You can say sexy because you can be ugly and sexy. You can be handsome and not sexy. You can be both. You can be good looking and sexy like me. You can be good looking and boring. There are women who are good looking but they are boring. They are not sexy. There are women who are ugly but sexy. When you look at them, when you talk of sex appeal, you look at a person, you think of bedroom. That's sex appeal. But now it has changed. If you've got money, you drive a Pajani, ya Mahumela, all these guys, that's why you see these guys, even the way they dress. And people saying, hey, when Ike, you've got issues. You don't dress. Like Abu Ket Matlala, Abu Java, Abu Big Zulu, all these guys, Basepitori, Socials. You can't dress gushy. From top to bottom. I remember there was a friend of mine, Billy Mendoza, in the 90s, I think it was 92. He was dressed at Ray-Ban. It is a Gucci. Etin Egna jean. Lacoste take. I don't know a cap or was it LS. Shut in fit. You're wearing all labeled. You don't dress like that. We are shout. There's no Woolies Nyana, there's no Edgar's Nyana or, Zara Nyana. You must break it. You can't just wear like, Gucci, Blackberry, babies and Blackberry, whatever. You must put a certain accent to it, And that, like Lacoste, Louis Vuitton, but you're too much. It's like that guy that was brought in, but he was buying the Ankola, Abu Cyril Ramaphosa. I think he's got, this Somali look, Indian look. He had Gucci. That's when no, he's not wealthy. Imagine you see Mark Zuckerberg dress Gucci. They do wear label, but it's small. You don't wear jersey like this, there'll be no label. You have to go, big label ngasemuva. So these guys bagqoke kanjalo, uyametsha. Maybe impahla bakhethelwa abafazi. And you look at insist was a bar in fact. Let mojos chel let mojos elevate, and there we are, clever said, let's know slap tigers, mojos as no clevers. That's what has happened,
In their defense though, when somebody wears Gucci from head to toe, he's making a statement to the public, you see, when the wealthy...
What statement?
Your Mark Zuckerberg, right, doesn't wear that. It's because he doesn't care about the public.
Let me tell you, Mina, maybe my premise is this. I used to wear labels for a fee, even fashion shows, and whenever I wear a label, as you say, for a statement, if I'm wearing a boss suit or I'm driving a certain car, that car must elevate me to a degree that I'm able to unlock certain business interest. It's fine, I hear you. But there's certain label. Once you start wearing them, all of them together, you start to look cheap. you start looking like somebody who's looking for validation. When you are a king, you know that you are king. You don't have to shout. You don't hear a lion saying, I'm lion, recognize me. But those type of outfits, ne suede shoes, shina, diamond, pezul, it's like you're screaming for attention. It's like these women who are posting bombs. It's an equivalent of that. Posting bombs on social media, you must look the other way. That's an equivalent of that. You know, when you're wearing label to label, you can tone down, it be nice. But anyway, that's subjectivity. I'll leave it at that. But it's South Africa, you know, and ibhari yizo esiphethe imali, and yeah, you wonder ukuthi where are we going, you know, going forward. Yeah, but for me now, yeah, the ANC, it's a party that it needs to be gone the next elections. And I wonder with the South Africans bazovotela bani, because for me now even 50%, 40% is too much. ANC in the last elections, they should have got at least 20%, taking into account what the ANC did in South Africa. You know, inkinga umuntu omnyama la South Africa, ANC, I don't know, mfethu, when God was making man out of clay somewhere, the devil must have sat down and say, I'm going to give them the ANC. Because there is no way. You've got to hate black people to govern the way the ANC is governing. And they did not start now. From 1912, these were clever blacks who wanted to be included in the franchise of South Africa to the exclusion of others. But I'm a doctor, I'm a king, you know, and these others, no, maqaba. You know, Tina would not be. Maybe mina bengangena because ngukhumalo washo mzilikazi kaMashobana, and my mother is unkosi, so at least I would come in, you know, from both sides. Yabo bengizozama ngithi ngayingunkosi ngayingukhumalo. Yabo okay, join about. But it was never a party for the people, the educated, the doctors, aboxuma, makatu, lawyers, not a common man. Even women were not allowed to join back in the days, and we've seen the way, you know, they've run the party. You know, women in exile, the relationship, women and the ANC and their male counterparts, horrible. There are stories there with H. Buffett. It was not so nice. Yeah. So the ANC is the worst thing to ever happen to a black person. And all their leaders, with no exception, including Thabo Mbeki. Thabo Mbeki is a spectacular failure. I repeat that all the time. Jacob Zuma is a spectacular failure. Cyril Ramaphosa, all of them. But South Africans, they prefer one above the other. But for me, now all of them, yes.
They say that it's better the devil that you know than the one you don't.
You know what's my problem with black people? We always have to choose the better devil. Why can't we choose Jesus? I mean, all the time, we choose the lesser of. I mean, we have good examples. Malcolm X. Malcolm X was clean. After he changed from, is it Malcolm Little or Stuart Little, was it? He changed, he became Malcolm X. No flaws. No flaws. Robert Sobukwe, no flaws. Stephen Biko, he was a womanizer, you know, but above all, a good guy. But we always have to choose someone, okay, he's got scandals, but you must avoid, you know, that, you know, area in his life, you know. Why can't we have a person immaculate? Such good to know. This guy, he's Thomas Sankara. He's Patrice Lumumba. We always have to be okay and defend this guy. He's got a rape charge, sexual abuse, you know, he's stolen money here. Why can't we have someone who's just clean? Maybe I'm asking too much. You ask Uguti, is it a coincidence that Zanele Mbeki is almost a billionaire? Is it a coincidence that when Zuma became president, all his children, they become rich, they own production companies, Khulubuse, they're now driving a Lamborghini, Ferraris, they're going CAR or outside the country, dealing diamonds and gold, about to do Zana, they're given mineral rights, a billionaire from nowhere. Is it a coincidence? People would say, no, what would you do? And wouldn't you empower your children? Thomas Sankara never did that. You know, not everyone is corruptible using something as cheap as money. Not everyone. If I wanted to be that rich, I could have been. I've had modern opportunities that, normally presented to an average guy. I was always favored. But I always said, guys, maybe I'm a fool.
I want to know, right? All these opportunities that you always got, always had corruption underneath. That's why you had to reject them. Bringing me to my actual question. Is it so that in South Africa or Africa as a whole, to be a successful man or a rich man or a wealthy man, you have to either know somebody, be connected or corrupt? Is there no other way currently?
99% of the people who are wealthy, they've had to break the law. They've had to bypass some procedures. They've had to know certain people to connect them. Very few people who can come up maybe with a, intellectual property, they come up with a product that has never been invented. Somewhere people cut corners. Majority of the people who are wealthy, they've had to bypass certain processes. Look, there is a white crime. There is a crime where you're killing the society, but majority of the people, they've had to bend certain rules. And sometimes they use the law. You can use the law to be corrupt, like BEE. You can use the law to commit crime, to empower yourself. The same way as apartheid laws were enacted to empower certain people, to achieve what is immoral. BEE, it's criminal. It was not meant for ordinary men in the street. It was meant for Cyril Ramaphosa, Petis Motsepe, Dirang Moseneke, Jacob Zuma, Thabo Mbeki, Sakima Xozoma, all these few puppets. Not you. So that's where we find ourselves. And this thing, yoguthi minimum input, maximum output, is 2 apples, and the next thing it's 4 apples. In business, doesn't happen that way. And where we are in South Africa, people pay money to get certain contracts, be it government, to get jobs. Some they, have to lay down their bodies and be fucked. And then that never stops. Before you get paid for your invoice, you must pay someone who can pay you. You see where you find ourselves. Everybody wants money now. That's where we find ourselves in South Africa. So you need, I don't know, maybe a dictator. The flip side, the dictator, you have no check and balances. So depending on one person as a benevolent dictator, what happens if that person goes left? You're screwed. We need systems like go Sweden to make sure one after the other, they know what to do. Go China, one after the other, they know what to do. It's systematic. It's not dependent on one person. But this is where you find ourselves. Yeah, so we will see. But I'm surprised. Because people like Matlala, they're now heroes. And the women in the main, those who've had profiler people who are crying gender-based violence. And this is the guy who's been accused of attempting to kill a woman. That's why sometimes I don't take women seriously. As they say, good women are like children. On paper, they'll say they want a good guy. But in reality, they want a monster.
You don't believe that Matlala could be sympathized with after watching?
Look, sympathize with the guy if you want to, but take into account the guy has been accused of serious crimes. I do note and recognize ukuthi he's got to be presumed innocent. But I must also take into account ama-crimes accused ngawo, his involvement. Even now, before he's convicted, what qualifies him to get all these big tenders? What qualifies Mashadile? All of a Sunday, he owns property, buildings, hotels. After the money, Alexander Renewal Project, gone missing, 2 billion. Is it 2 billion or 3? Missing. They emerge. Who's Alexander Mafia? What qualifies them?
So
is it a coincidence? And one thing that I also want to mention, these ad hoc committees, I think people should be empowered to ask relevant questions. I think there should be workshops, because people just ask questions, give emotional statements, instead of putting a person in a corner. When you ask questions, you've got evidence. You are more like cross-examining a person. You're putting a person in a corner, trying to contradict a person. You said this. Like one guy, when he was questioning Matlala, I was impressed, because he said, earlier on, you said you distance yourself from this guy because he was unethical, he was immoral, you don't want to be associated with that. But later on, you associate with a drug dealer. Isn't that a contradiction? Isn't it that when we're friends, we're supposed to say, friend, I don't like what you're doing. You're killing the nation. You're putting a guy in the corner. You don't just ask a question and quote Bible verses and say, money is the root of all evil. Do you love money? And so what? I love money. But you must say, okay, you love money, but this is where you find yourself. You kill Barbados or Barbada because of 1, 2, 3, 4. You were here. What do you say to that? In your phone, we find messages that says, job well done. You conflict evidence again, you contradict a person, you put a person in a corner. The same as in court. You don't just ask a question. You ask a question you know the answer to. The trick cross-examiner in court. Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. You ask a question because you know this person is going to get here where I want. And then from there, it's checkmate. I like the fact that some MPs, they're emotional, not emotional, but they've got passion. But passion alone, it's going to end up, we like, you're we're against mine. I'm saying you did this, you're corrupt, you're not corrupt. You're corrupt, I'm older than you. Don't talk to me like a child, don't talk. But, ends up with nothing. You contradict a person. Say, that's a cat. You're saying, you don't know this guy. But here you are with him. Your cell phone conversations with him. The tower trace you, you're with him. That's the whole purpose of cross-examining. But they don't do that. They just ask. Some of them, they were admiring him. MK, it's kind of painful. How many people are Boshonga Maketang? It reminds me of a case Kahani. I like Krisani. When the SACP, they were protesting, Janus must not come out of jail. Okay, fine. But how many people have been killed because of the ANC policies, the ANC government not managing this country the way they should be? People who've been freed out of jail. I remember when Jeff Radebe was a Minister of Justice, they said there was a directive from him saying all these offenders who are doing life sentences, they should be converted to 12 years. After 12 years, you're eligible to parole. You must go before a parole board. Many of them, they applied. They went out. I remember one guy, he was a Zimbabwean. He killed so many people. He was out. There was a show about Yobe. Some of the senseless crimes that are happening, especially from illegal foreigners. This guy killed this Afrikaner guy, old man. And he came there, because of this program, your forgiveness, you want to go out. The wife asked this criminal, Yes, you killed my husband. Why did you take him to the bathroom? You opened for hot water. You forced him to drink. You know, internal organs, they were banned. This guy, you tied him. There was a case like east of Joburg. About 10 men, I don't know, 10 men, they raped these women. Babathola in a park, like in a dam. They forced their boyfriends, babafake emanzini. They drowned their boyfriends. They raped the women. I mean, such senseless crime. Especially Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans, they've got this hatred for South Africa. They wish that they were us. They want to replace us. Actually, all foreigners in South Africa, they hate us. They want to replace us. Nigerians, they want to replace us. Mozambicans, they want to replace us. All of them, Abala, they wish that they were us. They wish we can disappear. They don't love this country the same way we do. And you've got people about woke, Pan-Africanism, EFF, ANC, DA, talking for them because it's the policy of the globalists to confuse us, open our borders, mess up this country. This is where we find ourselves, which is sad. But South Africans, they love bad people. They love bad guys. South Africans. They vote for them all the time. They worship them. You can see in Nagoma podcast, people have done horrible crimes. They've got a following. There was a DJ who was accused of rape. Such a painful thing. This guy, he had 3 million followers on Twitter. Even after the accusations, he was following around 38 people. Yeah. He had about 3 million followers. It's like the more, corrupt you can be, the more followers you get. Check all these people who are corrupt, who are naked, strippers. They've got a following. But if you do good, people ignore you. But South Africans, they love bad guys. So I don't blame also their women folk.
You don't think that...
Maybe they're a reflection of the society's pedagogy.
Yes, you don't think that they were conditioned that way to be bad, People hate people that speak the truth because they've been conditioned to love the lie,
I'm also hated. Wherever I go, sometimes I bump into people, but it's nanglo. And there are those people who embrace me. I know which is for real. And some of them, they are scared to be seen around me. Even in the arts, I remember I attended a memorial service at Patrick Shy. People say, yeah, when I can't sit next to you. I said, but it's me who says these things. And it's me who's been fighting in the arts. I'm an artist, I be recognized, I'm a right, standard contract. But people, yeah.
Don't you think the average man is controlled into liking a lie? It's not his own will of evil to like evil. But higher powers, the multinationals, have conditioned his mind to make him like or comply or be scared to go against the narrative.
The choice is yours eventually. You make a choice. When people saying, I don't have a choice, they're lying. They're actually saying, I've had a difficult choice to make. You always have a choice. Even a homeless person has a choice. There are certain things that you did not do to end up where you are. We always have a choice. So it's easy to say I didn't have a choice. Even prostitutes, you can be selling petrol at a garage. You can be working at McDonald's, but they don't want that. They want a soft life. People nowadays, they want a soft life. Irrespective of how many people have been killed for that soft life. And then they become surprised later on when the devil showing up at the cocktail party with a tail long enough to tell endless tales of horror. And then they want to change later on. But they've already picked their side. Ketile. So this is where we find ourselves. But I hope, South Africa is a beautiful country. We are blessed in the weather. We've got all 4 seasons. Other countries, they've got 1 season. It's cold, or it's warm, It's, you're in the equator. You're pitch black, smelly, no matter what you eat, your armpits are smelly. South Africa is the most beautiful country in the world to all the seasons. You can go into a rural South Africa, you can go to the city, you can go, there's vegetation, you can go Kruger National Park, you will see wild animals, you can be in a first world country within minutes. And I normally say, Ugoji, South Africa has the most beautiful women in the world. I'm not exaggerating this. I'm saying it and I back it up. Mangiti. In South Africa, we've got the variety. We kill these other nations because Ethiopians, they're beautiful, but they all look the same. People in China, they all look the same. Japanese, if you've seen one beauty, you've seen all. The features are the same. Then you find one tribal group, we don't look the same. A Zulu from KZN and a Zulu from Joburg don't look the same. A Pedi from Limpopo and a Pedi from KZN or Pedi from Gauteng don't look the same. The vendors, they don't look the same. The colors don't look the same, in South Africa, unlike Eritrea, Ethiopia. You find a colors who's got a Filipino look, who's got a black look, who's got a Chinese look, who's got an Afrikaner look. You find a colors who's got, an Irish look. You find a white woman who's got curves, bumps. You can see there's a DNA here. You see an Indian, who's dark. You see a light-skinned Indian, you see a curvaceous Indian, you see, Afrikaner, Umariki, thick, juicy, curvy, we are popoma. You see slender. You see somebody with big bums, small bums. Other countries don't have that. And the bottle of Coca-Cola is only found in South Africa. All others are my exceptions. In America, Americans are Nigerians. You can see even their men. They behave like Nigerians. The Crips, gangs. You find an adult of 60 still goes to club. He smokes drugs. All of these entertainers, they're into gang culture. You ask yourself, Tina, we don't do those things. Once you're 30, you're out. But South Africa is blessed. But South Africans don't recognize that. That's why Nigerians are coming here. They want to dilute their genes. So in the future, we're going to have a child with a flat head. A child who's a girl child, at 7, is wearing size 14 shoes, no calves, no bums. He looks like Zimbabweans. I've never seen a 10 in Zimbabwe, 100% Shona. It has to be diluted. It has to be diluted with other tribes or other races. Mabati, this is a Zimbabwean Shona, who's beautiful. You must know that person is not 100% Shona. Maybe it's mixed with Ndebele. Ndebeles, most of them, they come from South Africa. You can see, okay, but Zimbabwe, Shona, I will struggle. The countries that I will be okay. Rwanda, they look the same. Maybe Rwanda, Algeria, Ethiopia, Eritrea, North Sudan, South Sudan, they're exotic. They all look the same. Western Sahara, Morocco, Cape Verde, but all these other countries where I said they've got beauty, they all look the same. We don't look the same. It's a variety. If you go to Joburg South, the colors look beautiful. People look beautiful. You go to KZN, you'll find the Zulus, Moya, Lego, Richards Bay. Some of them, they're mixed. Many of them, they're mixed with British Empire. You go to Northwest, you find Botswana, wow. You go to Eastern Cape, you find beauty that doesn't look like the beauty of Kwamanyama province. You see a Xhosa Bay. Wow. We are a Cape Town. You see a Cape Colored, you see Mxhosa Lapaya. You go to Kimberley, different. So you're spoiled for choice. So that's why I normally tell young men, don't worry, if they don't want you, you've got 8 billion people here on earth, and your value increases with time, and time will tell because you don't have a biological clock. With you, you get better with time. The more you age as a guy, your value is increased, and especially if you know what to do, work yourself up, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
And last question. You say later on South Africa will be impure because there won't be a pure South African, it will be a South African with foreign heritage.
They'll be diluted.
Due to the large influx of foreigners. Now, at that moment, when South Africa is now fully impure, who would be to blame, right? Would it be the government for allowing them in, or would it be the public for not revolting in time? Because once it's impure, it'll be too late to revolt. Because no one will revolt.
I blame men, Gakulu, because it is these Sims. Majority of the guys in politics, even during our days when we were comrades, majority of the guys were so invested, wanting power, wanting political power. These guys are bangajoli. I mean, you look at Lamula, you can't see a player in Lamula, you can't see umuntu wabantwana. Julius Mane makes umuntu wabantwana. Maybe abashaya because bayeza, because inje yabona of power. But akusumuntu ngathi yazini, ayilebe intswembu ngabantwana. Thina masikhulekazi, itsida untswembu ngejewish, untswembu ngokujiva, wazibhola, untswembu ngabantwana unesicamtho, emajiteni wisiphakami, uyaspina. But these guys, kuma politics, all of them, they are mohos. All these political parties. Okay, let's go to UDM. Majority of these guys are Bomazweni, and many of them, they were into TBV states, homelands. They were benefiting that side. They were puppet leaders. Because Kuma homeland, they didn't take anyone, like in the ANC, like PEE. Not anyone could be a puppet leader into Bantustan. They took these royal guys who came from royal families, Chief so-and-so, Chief Matanzima, Chief Mangope, Banibani, Abu Patudi. These guys, they were almost related. They're coming here. And many of them were simps. I mean, they were simps. Do you see when getting without man, without politics, do you see Julius Malema go? Do you see Cyril Ramaphosa go? Do you see Jacob Zuma without political power go? Namakanda itu. Uba no money. Do you see Vusimuzi when I go umuntu wabantwana? But we at Dobsonville, I wonder, esamukho naye. Akabonakalisa ubuso wethu ubukazi. Yazi mawubuya boma, Tembisa, Muhlakeng, Randfontein, Soshanguve, Atteridgeville. Kumele kube another thing. Ayikho kuMvusimuzi. All these political parties, boy Herman Mashaba. Herman Mashaba, I credit him, at least was sebenzisile lama opportunities wamajuda. Ends up black like me, employed people, njengabo maponya. One thing that the openers did, they found pockets of excellence, Kuma Township, and sponsored those people. Match nabo, like Abu Richard Maponya, Abu Herman Mashaba, and who else? They'll go to Durban, find an equivalent. Yeah, but it is like that. I blame these men and feminism. Feminism has corrupted women. Feminists think that they can do everything that a man can do without consequences. You are wired different. You are not the same. A man can sleep with 1,000 women without feeling the pinch. Women, they've got to be emotionally invested, involved, and it hits them differently. That's why even prostitutes, they've got to be drugged. They've got to drink. Some they say, I don't kiss. Because all those bodies, they linger on. That's why us guys, we know it. We don't want a woman with high body count. Prostitutes, you don't even look at them. These women, they've got high body count. They've been fucked for a dinner at Mark and Bean. Somebody takes you out and then he's sleeping with you. They've lowered their guards. There's so many beautiful women nowadays who are easy. Back in the days, you'll be moving around for 2 years before you could find an 8 and sleep with that 8. Nowadays, it's easy. Every gorilla backs a beautiful woman. There's plenty. They are easy. And they've lowered their guard because the bad ones are influencing them. Haven't you noticed, Guti, many women, Bama feminists, they're ugly. And they're dictating the script. Back in the days, you'll find a beautiful woman in the company of ugly women. The ugly woman will be the gatekeeper. Beautiful women, they don't have brains. They always ask for you go ahead, show me, how's that guy? They go to the bathroom, now he's fine. If you can convince the ugly one, you are banging the beautiful ones. So the feminists, many of them, they are angry. They didn't get attention in high school. They invested in books, reading. They want to get back. That's why they look like men. And then we are not the same. I hate feminism. That's why women don't want marriage. Many of them, they've never been asked out. Many of them, they're not marriage material because they've disqualified themselves in a high body count from an early stage. Then I don't like marriage. Marriage is slavery. Marriage is not slavery. Marriage is the best invention ever created by man or God because it has, allowed order. When men were in control, there was order. We used to call women amabunjubunja, amashambula, abantwana bamashanda pha. Khona manje it's free for all. Men, they have lost the control. Women are called slave queens. They're called hoes. They're going to whole face. Are we getting worse or better? When men were in control, there was a culture of shame. There was no paternity fraud like we see, teenage pregnancies. Today, there is paternity fraud, there is single parenthood. I'm coming. And it's because men have lost power. And men understood, ukuthi, for you to keep women in check, you must exercise control in terms of finances, economy, morals, culture, religion. To say to women, you are not allowed to do this because of this. Culture doesn't allow. Money will sanction you. Will even imprison you. Arabs, they imprison them. They even use physical violence. Sometimes you will be in a party. A woman no figure la line because we had power then. But now we can't do that because we are all free. And when we are free, these people, they cannot be trusted. They, decide on their feelings. They just move willy-nilly. And before they know it, all these spams, they are imprinted. They're raging inside the board. Kune Nigerian, ngapha kune Mozambicans, ngapha you slept with the Congolese, ngapha you slept with the Zulu man. So all that madness, all these people, they come flashing. Tina, we are guys, you don't feel that way. I mean, I can sleep with 1,000 women. Some I don't even remember. So for them, opening legs for all these guys, and the ugly guys who are killers, all this spirit, they get into them. And then later on, I just want a man who's gonna love me. No, you're damaged. And the mountain ngapha, so you swim. And then they want to force you to come and be a stepfather. Lento le ayizwa ifana nobabayo. Mawuthi uyabheka ayina culture enzelanga isiko. Ubaba khona uzomthola kuphi useGambia, useBenin. Yes.
Paternity fraud. I love that word. So many times I've heard from judiciary members that due to the number of fatherless children in South Africa, every time a case comes from court where they have to do a DNA testing, they themselves identify with a woman who has to deal with a fatherless child, and hence, most of the time, even if the father is or not, they just they stamp the father to be the father, even if he's not.
Yeah, because
can you testify as part of the judiciary? Is this true or just a rumor?
Listen, man, we're in a constitutional democracy where the rights of the children, they're paramount, they reign supreme. If I marry a woman, chances are that, let's say, I adopt her child. We divorce. I'm going to support that child for life because the court will look in the best interest of the child. The child knows you, even if you know Baba Khan. And there's a presumption ukuthi a child born inside marriage is the child go Baba no Mama. For you to run away from that responsibility, you've got to fight, Baba. Go court and all those things, you've got to fight. But if a child is already accustomed to you, maybe 5 years, 6 years, do you know how difficult it is? You might find another judge feeling otherwise. But the child knows you, and the responsibility doesn't end. I mean, we've got situations where someone is divorced. He found a woman with a child from another man. But they say the maintenance must continue. What do you call that? It happens. The best interest of the child will come first. But nowadays, like I said, the feminists, they've messed up, especially black feminists. You don't see white feminists fighting their own, calling them trash, calling them, useless, toxic, sejani and all that. Indians, you don't find them doing that. It's only our black feminists. Many of them, they're angry. They insult the institution of marriage, an institution that has been able, to plant and nurture certain values. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. Making sure that there is a structure. People who are born, single parenthood, they do, struggle And the statistics say, ukuthi, kids that are raised by single mothers, they do worse off than those raised by single fathers. Isn't it better when there's two parents? But this is where we find ourselves, people insulting the institution of marriage and the custodians with marriage, which is the church. They're bloody quiet. I always ask, where is the church? Who's the next Bishop Tut? Who's Alan Busak? Who's Njongonkulu Dungana? Who's Dandala? No one. Who's the Mother Teresa? The church has succumbed. The church has become a business enterprise. It's about you must pay money, otherwise you can't see the pastor. I mean, Abo Pushiri, Bo Omatoso. Church leaders abusing young girls. Educated people, they surrender their brains when they go to church. They leave their brains at the door. They call the young man of 22 Papa. A young man will abuse their wives, touch their wives' breasts, sleep with their wives. And it's all right because this man is a man of God. Harabakasha.
This means that the whole society,
Jaira.
the whole society has been corrupted.
Yeah.
The judges now, your own judge friend is on the trial. Pastors, they are doing atrocious things.
Yeah, South Africans, it's just that they're desperate. You know, once the country becomes a failed state, you wipe the middle class off the table. You've got the super rich and the poor. What happens to these ones in between? They go to sangomas, they're looking for hope now. They're playing lotto, they're gambling. They go to the church. You want a quick fix because hope is lost with the system. So you go to all these charlatans. Yeah? And when you get there, the sangomas, they abuse them. There's no beautiful woman who comes from initiation by sangoma who's not fucked. They fuck them. When they come back, they married to a sangoma, or now they are attached, and the husband has to fight tooth and nail, which I want my wife back, and and many of them, they come pregnant, twasa, and most women, once they start saying, you know what, I'm devoting my life to Christ, you must know what has been run through. Many of them, when they say, I'm now devoting my life to Christ, I'm now celibate, they become celibate after the fact. You start with virginity, you become celibate. You don't just go to train smashing and then be celibate. I mean, we are already gone. But South Africans, you know, because they're looking for miracles, they're looking for, you know, quick fix. I remember I was invited in one church. You know, I was there, Pastor Zondo's church, somewhere in the East End. Dropping knowledge, Baba. Well researched, talking about Heru, how religion was formed using cosmology, the 12 tribes, the 12 disciples, the 12 seasons, cosmological science, you know, how this, you know, is infused into religion, Heru, you know, Aset, Immaculate Conception, all these books of the Bible, how they came out, formed into a mythology. People are listening to me. Was another lady with big bums. This lady, what? Hey, okay, Johnny. Hey, why you can't say in daughter? A pet umkonto, ingagara, yazinya al-sharada, jahira, labasunda, laba. People erupted. They climbed into their seat, but this person was saying nonsense. You know, a person can come and say, Al Jazeera, CNN, BMW, and people are shouting and say, yo, this person is dropping gems. Like I was listening to Parliament. I was listening to this colored lady, Darlene, asking Ike Matlala. I saw my comments, dropping knowledge. She was just shouting, you're corrupt. But she was not pinning this guy down. He says, you're corrupt. This guy says, I'm not corrupt. You were there. You took guns. This guy says, I took guns. I was there. No, you were not there. But pin the guy down and say, listen, here it is. Here's the receipt. It's not you who signed here. So and so, there's a video footage. Pin a guy down in cross-examination. People say he's dropping bombs. People, they're so allergic and I don't know, to the truth. They like bombs, dropping knowledge.
So, is there any way, you know, to unfail the state? And do you at least believe that these revelations are creating enough awareness And we as a country are progressing to becoming an unfailed state. As you can see, everybody that's corrupt is becoming more and more exposed.
Maybe we should ask, do we have a state? Maybe we should have a serious discussion. Do we still have a state? And all these things that are being shown, they've been happening. And they're just, the Mickey Mouse. Showing shortly. There are billions stolen in this country. Every day. There's coal going to Germany. There are bilateral agreements signed. When you see a president meeting a president of Venezuela or whatever, they're signing away your land. Konamanjes we are G20. They're talking of mineral, extraction and all that. They're taking from us and giving nothing. So we don't own this country. I mean, you check even COVID, how much money was lost in billions. There are companies who don't even pay tax here. Under Thabo Mbeki, companies, they fled, capital migration. Many of these multinationals, they just come and take our minerals. They are being developed, second phase, third phase, but in the beneficiation elsewhere, because we don't own them. This country is still owned by those who owned us before 1652. Your kings, your chiefs, they're just puppets. Mrs. Zulu, one day, you'll have no constituency. Because the Zulus in KZN, they'll be half Malawi, half Nigerian, half whatever. And they're not speaking on that. Immigration, they're not speaking on that. But they're signing deals. Signing now with China. Everyone comes here and takes something. By the time ANC gets out of power, you'll find that in that land and it for Naiko. With more to Eastern Cape, actually, with the Arabs, they've taken, a certain portion of land. They've taken Coffee Bay. They've taken this. You've got nothing. You've signed treaties. And once you start to revolt, you're going against international treaties and law. The United Nations comes in and, these guys, they send in soldiers. Yeah.
This is very true, Ike. I know you're about to close, but I just have to comment. I'm pausing now. I'm not. In Sanson, I never thought that, okay, there's a place called Lenasia. And a lot of
Gaddafi owned Michelangelo.
Westbury, and all these places where I thought that only the government had power to have so much power to move racial people or a certain class of people to one place, an area, and that. Of late, though, in this year, in 2025, I've been going to Sanson, and different parts of Sanson that I didn't know existed, but Arabs knew. And they've built their own new lineages, new massive communities, massive communities, So I have to just say that.
China is taking everything. All the open lands, you are going Midrand, we are Lamfe to east of Joburg, they're taking everything. Everyone is taking everything in South Africa. And before we know, our shoreline, the sea economy, they're taking everything. Companies are coming from Australia, they're taking everything. So, the country is gone. The ANC, they've taken everything. And these multinationals. So, we are doomed. But South Africans, they're worried about who's going to win the soccer match, who's going to win the league. Is Ronaldo the GOAT? Is Messi the GOAT? Things that don't shape our lives, don't change the price of bread. But anyway, that's where we find ourselves. And once more, I say, until we meet another time, and peace and out.